A boy named Jess and his friend Leslie are attacked by strange creatures in the woods. Jess manages to get past them, but suddenly a vulture attacks him. He's then about to fall to his death, but a giant troll shows up and mysteriously saves him. A few days earlier, Jess returns home from his running practice to have breakfast with his family. While his sisters fight at the table, Jess doesn't seem to care, and he eventually cleans up for school. As he's about to head out, he can't find his sneakers, so he asks his mom about it. She says she threw them away because they were already bad, and that he should wear one of his older sister's shoes instead. Jess doesn't look happy because his sister's shoes are girly, and as he complains, his dad shows up and asks what's wrong. When he hears what happened, Jess's dad, Jack, tells his wife, Mary, that they need to get a new pair for their son. However, Mary calls her husband to the side and tells him that they can't afford to buy new shoes because they're broke. Jack eventually has to tell Jess to manage his sister's shoes and finish his chores before heading to school. Jess looks disappointed, but he's left with no other options. So he wears the pink sneakers even though he paints part of it black. While he's then doing his chores in the family's greenhouse, the school bus arrives and he runs to meet it. As he tries to find a seat, a senior student named Janice throws her snack on Jess to make fun of him. Shortly after he sits, his little sister, May Bell, comes over to sit beside him, but he pushes her away. As they arrive at school, Jess gets bullied by two boys, Gary and Scott, while he's drawing in class. Unfortunately, the teacher, Mrs. Myers, thinks Jess is at fault, so she scolds him. As he looks disappointed, the principal enters the class and introduces a new student named Leslie, who has just moved into town. Later that day, Leslie tries to use the toilet, but Janice tells her to pay first. Leslie is left shocked by this, but before Janice gets violent, she leaves. She then joins Jess and some other boys to participate in a race. Scott tries to get her to leave because all the other participants are boys, but Jess tells him to leave her alone. During the race, Jess does quite well, with May Bell cheering for him. However, Leslie suddenly passes him and eventually wins the race. Jess is unhappy with this, and as Leslie tries to make friends with him, he ignores her. When the school bus drops Jess and May Bell at the entrance of their house, they're left shocked to see Leslie walking behind them. Jess asks if she's following him, but Leslie says she lives next door. While Jess doesn't seem to care much, May Bell and Leslie talk about their toys until they finally head separate ways. When Jess arrives home, he opens his drawing book and sees that May Bell has played with it again. He confronts her about this, but she denies it. Jack then enters the room to see why they're arguing, and May Bell quickly runs to him. Jess eventually says what happened, but as his dad looks through his drawings, he just returns it and tells his son to finish his chores. Jess doesn't look happy about this, but he goes on to do his work. The next day at school, the music teacher, Miss Edmonds, arrives to take her class. Jess seems to like her, and as Leslie sees this, she jokes about it with him. The following day, Leslie sees Jess's drawings and says he's the best artist she has ever seen. He thanks her for the compliment, and they head to Mrs. Myers' class together. There, Mrs. Myers commends Leslie for writing a nice poem for her assignment. Leslie is then called out to read the poem, which is about scuba diving. After she's through, Mrs. Myers tells the students to watch a TV program that will be part of their assignment. Leslie says she doesn't have a TV at home, and all the students laugh at her. She's unhappy about this, and while on the school bus later that day, she sits in Janice's place. Before Janice shows up and gets violent, Jess gets Leslie to change seats. When they arrive home, Leslie asks Jess what he does for fun, and as he says nothing, she tells him they can find something to do. May Bell wants to join them, but Jess tells her to go home. She doesn't look happy about this, but Leslie changes her mood by offering to give her some toys. After May Bell leaves, Leslie says Jess is lucky to have a sister, but he says he'd trade them to have a dog. Leslie then says that even though she has always wanted to have a dog, she has never had one. Shortly after, Jess and Leslie race themselves into the woods. Jess then asks Leslie about her poem, but she says she made it up. They then see a rope dangling from a tree over a creek. Leslie suggests swinging with it, and Jess also joins her. After they're through, Leslie says they need a place just for them. Jess doesn't sound so sure about it, but Leslie says they can imagine that there's a magical kingdom in the woods. Before Jess can say much, Leslie swings with the rope to the other side, so he has to follow her. As he walks around, he sees some squirrels around and starts to look scared. Shortly after, they both see an abandoned car, and as they hear the sound of keys dangling, Leslie says it's the chains of prisoners of a monster called the Dark Master. Jess doesn't seem to be enjoying Leslie's imaginary world, but before he can say anything, she sees something and tells him to follow her. He does this, but as he's following her, he sees a strange, shadowy creature in the woods. He ignores it, and after a while, he and Leslie see an old treehouse. Leslie says it's an old fortress of people now being held by the Dark Master. She also sees some dragonflies and calls them her warriors. Jess says he doesn't understand the game because all he can see is an old treehouse, but she says it's not a game. She then climbs to the top and asks if the kingdom's people can hear her. A strange wind blows, but Jess thinks it's only a coincidence. However, as it happens again, he starts to think they might actually be in a magical kingdom. When he gets home, it's all he thinks about, and the next day after school, he follows Leslie there again. Together, they spend their time making the old treehouse look better. The following day, Janice gets Jess kicked out of the school bus. He eventually has to walk home, but he meets Leslie waiting for him, with her face and clothes stained with ketchup. After telling him that Janice did it to her, she begs him to let her go to his house to clean up so that she won't get her parents worried. Jess agrees to help, and after she's through, he introduces her to Mary and his older sisters before heading out. When they get to their imaginary fortress later that day, some squirrels start throwing nuts into the treehouse, but Leslie says they're under attack from the Dark Master's warriors. Jess also imagines this, and he helps fight back. Shortly after, Leslie tells him to climb to the top to see the whole kingdom better. While she sees a magical kingdom, Jess says he can only see a normal grass field. Leslie then tells him to open his mind, and with this, he finally sees a beautiful kingdom, which she calls Terabithia. The next day is Jess's birthday, and his family surprises him with a small cake and a birthday present. While his dad later complains about the toy, Maybelle comes over to inform Jack that there's something in their greenhouse. He immediately checks and sees that an animal has broken in. Jack laments about this and says he'll kill the animal the next time he sees it. Jess thinks this is harsh, but he doesn't mention it to his dad. The next day, Leslie gives Jess an expensive painting set as his birthday present. Jess doesn't think he deserves something that expensive, but Leslie tells him to keep it. Later that day in Terabithia, a tree falls against the treehouse while Leslie and Jess are inside. While Jess is terrified because they could have gotten injured, Leslie says it's likely a giant troll sent by the Dark Master to get them. Despite still looking scared, Jess follows Leslie to look for where the giant troll came from. When they don't see anything, Leslie says they need to get a troll hunter to be able to find the giant troll. The next day, Jack's trap catches the pest that broke into the greenhouse, but Jess finds it first. He then takes it away and frees it, after which he returns home. However, Jack discovers what his son did and complains about it. Jess says the animal won't come back, but Jack tells him that things don't work that way and he needs to get his head out of the cloud. Jess looks disappointed to hear this, and it bothers him throughout the day. Even as Leslie asks when they'll start hunting for the giant troll, he tells her to get her head out of the clouds because there's no giant troll in the woods. Leslie still sounds positive and tells Jess that the Terabithians expect their king to save them from the trolls. Just then, Jess sees a place where a dog has been put up for adoption. The next day at school, Maybelle tells Jess that Janice took away her snack. Leslie also says that Janice needs to be stopped because she charges students for using the toilet. Leslie then leads a small protest against Janice, and there, Maybelle tells Jess to fight for her. However, he takes her away and says he can't do that because he could get suspended. As he walks away, Leslie tells Maybelle not to worry because they'll get Janice later. When Jess gets home that night, he thinks about what Leslie said about him being the king of Terabithia. The following day, he tells Leslie that he's ready to go hunting. He also happens to have adopted a dog that will be their troll hunter. Leslie looks happy to now have a dog, and she names him Prince Terrian. Not long after, they begin hunting and eventually find the giant troll. Before it can do anything to them, Terrian appears to tickle the troll, and this gets it off their backs. Later on, Leslie and Jess start thinking of what they can do to get back at Janice. Leslie asks if she likes any boys, and Jess says there's one. Together, they compose a fake letter from the boy telling Janice how much he likes her. They successfully drop the letter at her table, and the plan works quite well, with the boy snubbing Janice after she had announced to everyone that he liked her. This gets her embarrassed, but Leslie and Jess are happy to get their revenge. When the school bus drops them off, Leslie sees her parents doing some work on the house, so she asks Jess for help. He agrees and spends his time with Leslie's parents to paint their house. Leslie's dad, Bill, also praises Jess's painting skills and says he has the hands of a talented artist. The next day at school, Gary and Scott bump into Jess, so his drawing book falls. Miss Edmonds sees it and asks if he's taking art classes, but he says he's not doing that. She then tells him that he's really talented and he shouldn't let the other kids get to him. When he enters the school, he and Leslie hear Janice crying in the girls' restroom. After contemplating what to do because they feel sorry for her, Leslie offers to speak to Janice. She does this, and after school, when Jess asks what happened, Leslie says Janice's dad always hits her. She also says that some of Janice's friends found out and started teasing her. As they're talking, rain starts falling, and they have to leave. Days later, while Jack is working on something in the house, he gives Jess his keys to help pick up something in the greenhouse. After picking it, Jess sees Maybelle inside the greenhouse and teaches her how to plant her crops better. Following this, he returns inside and goes to meet his dad. The next day, though, Jack asks for his keys because Jess never returned them. Despite checking around, Jess doesn't find it, and his dad gets angry because he'd have to spend a lot of money to replace the keys. Jess gets tired of the nagging and tells Jack he'll find the keys. On his way to school the next day, Leslie sees that Jess doesn't look happy and asks what happened. He tells her about the key, and she says she has something to confess. Maybelle then looks scared as Leslie mentions that the key is in Terabithia. She says Maybelle gave it to her to add to the decorations in their fortress. Jess is not happy with this, but later that day, he and Leslie head over to Terabithia, only to see that the volume of water in the creek is increasing. They still go across it, but as they're about to get the key, they get attacked by the Dark Master's soldiers. Jess and Leslie fight back and call on their dragonfly soldiers to help them. Shortly after, Jess gets the key, but as a vulture attacks him, he falls from the tree. Luckily, a giant troll mysteriously appears and saves him. He then leaves with Leslie as the rain starts falling. The next day, Miss Edmonds calls Jess to invite him to a museum she's going to. Since his dad is not home, he asks his mom, and she reluctantly says yes while sleeping. He then accepts Miss Edmonds' invitation, and she picks him up shortly afterward. As they're about to leave, Jess thinks about inviting Leslie too, but he eventually decides against it. He and Miss Edmonds then head to the museum and have a good time. Later that day, she drops him off, and he tells her that he enjoyed himself. When he enters his house, Mary quickly hugs him and says he scared the whole family. Jess is shocked by this, but his sisters say they thought he was dead. As he wonders what's happening, Jack tells him that Leslie is dead, and she drowned in the creek while trying to swing across with a rope. Jess doesn't believe this, but as he runs outside, he sees that there are police cars in Leslie's house. He then runs back inside and looks at his drawing of Leslie before falling asleep. The next day, Jess's parents suggest going to see Leslie's parents to pay their respects. When they get there, Bill looks happy to see Jess. He thanks Jess for being his daughter's only friend and also mentions that he's the best friend she has ever had. As he walks around afterward, Jess sees Miss Edmonds and tells her that they should have invited Leslie to the museum. The next day at school, Scott tries to make a joke about Leslie's death, but Jess is not having any of it. He punches Scott, and this forces Mrs. Myers to take him out to the hallway. There, she tells him that she's sorry about Leslie's death. She also consoles him and tells him not to be too hard on himself. After school that day, Gary still bullies Jess and walks away. However, Janice sees this and beats up Gary, after which she sits next to Jess on the school bus. As the bus drops him off, Jess decides to go to Terabithia. While walking around, he hears someone calling him and thinks it's Leslie. However, it turns out to be Maybelle, who is about to fall into the creek. After he saves her, he tells her to go home, but she says she's worried about him. He pushes her angrily and tells her to leave him alone. Maybelle then runs home to meet Jack while crying. Shortly after, Jess sees the Dark Master and starts running away. However, he falls down, and as the Dark Master is about to pick him up, it turns out to be Jack. Jess then cries in Jack's arms as he says he's at fault for Leslie's death because he didn't invite her to the museum. Jack tells him not to blame himself and that all he needs to do is to hold on to the memories he shared with Leslie. Following this, Jess goes to say sorry to Maybelle, but she ignores him. As he then goes to his room, he starts thinking of what to do next. The following day, he puts his drawing of Leslie on a small wooden raft and lets it float away in the creek. When he leaves there, he sees Bill already on his way out. Jess runs after him until he eventually stops. He asks if he can use the lumber at Bill's house, and he agrees. As Bill then says he doesn't know whether to give up Terrian, Jess says Leslie would have wanted her father to keep the dog. Shortly after, Jess then starts building something in Terabithia. When he's through, he invites Maybelle and she accepts. As they get to the new bridge Jess built to Terabithia, Maybelle looks really excited. He then tells her about the imaginary place and the people there. He also makes her a princess and tells her to keep her mind open so she can fully see the imaginary world. She does this and looks excited by how beautiful it looks. Shortly after, a giant troll crowns Jess as king, after which he and Maybelle are welcomed into the magical land.